Okay, once again, we are live and ready to go. Good evening, Mark. How are you today?
I'm great.
Awesome, mate. Awesome. How's the US today? Is it
Well,
surviving? Is it surviving?
we're still sort of in one piece as far as I know.
I hear
We'll see after tomorrow.
I hear they're moving the troops in, so that could you're well protected.
The troops are definitely in.
uh, we won't start with that. We'll start with our main idea, which is really how to create those big ideas. And I guess, as everyone likes to put it, how do you create those $1 million ideas on demand? I'll let you open it up there, Mark, because you were talking about it earlier.
Yeah. So the subject that we were talking about today is like, what should we talk about? And one of the things that is perpetually on my plate is having to deal with problem solving. My life started off as a problem solver. I'm basically an engineer at heart. And engineers, that's what they do, is they solve problems. So the difference between somebody that tinkers or invents or noodles around versus someone that's a professional is that professionals have different approaches, different structures, different mechanisms that they use to be able to take problems apart and produce multiple potential solutions. And I thought maybe today we could talk about how you explore a solution and how you approach a problem to end up coming up with a creative result, a creative outcome that really serves you well. So in the case of business, it's about creating a business model that you can monetize that keeps you in a competitive advantage that's not easily duplicated and knocked off.
Yeah, yeah. I know that you're a big fan of like the business models, and you use that book. I can't think of the name of it, but I know you'll have it there somewhere on the business models.
Business model generation.
That's the one. Do you have any go-to models that you use regularly? Like, from my perspective, coming from that kind of marketing perspective, I use three very simple models. One's kind of the high ticket model. Another is kind of the PLF model, which is product launch formula model. And then I've got automated models that I use. So me, predominantly in the online world, or taking people from offline to online, I'm using those. I guess they're more mechanisms for delivery versus business models, but a lot of people do see them as business models. Do you have any go-to ones that you use?
Well, let's back up just a little bit and get more generic.
Sure.
So problem solving could be coming up with a meaningful blog article or a meaningful concept for a book, or any a product that you have to come up with a product that serves a need and is well received by the market.
Sure.
It could be a problem around the operation of a business, getting a product out the door, getting a service out the door, dealing with the financing and advertising around a product, especially what happens if Facebook shuts you down. That's never happened to anybody. I mean, that's totally hypothetical. What happens if the platform kicks you off their platform? We just don't know. I mean, there's uncertainty around all of that. And I think that with the events here in the US in the last week or so, and the COVID-19 pandemic around the world, we're seeing a tremendous amount of disruption around systems and processes that we have come to accept as normal. So how do you deal with that unexpected uncertainty? What's your approach to that? What's your strategy behind it? And most of the people in the world today, I think, because I've talked to at least 500 businesses now since March, and connected with another 7,000 on LinkedIn via messages and direct connects. the vast majority are unprepared. And because they're unprepared, it leaves them in a situation where they go into panic reaction. What am I going to do? How am I going to survive? How am I going to meet payroll? How am I going to make my rent? How am I do this? How am I going to eat? You know,
Yep.
all of those immediate kinds of things. So I think this whole concept of understanding the structure around creativity is a very important tool in our survival toolbox and our existence and our ability to innovate toolbox.
It's, I was going to say, it's a very like, and you know, for me personally, it's a very natural thing to problem solve. And some people, it's not natural. For me, like I almost feel, I feel like, why are you asking this question, Mark? Why are you asking such a basic question? But a lot of people don't have problem solving skills. They don't have creativity, like flowing through their veins kind of thing, to be able to problem solve. So it is a big problem out there. I guess, like, if I'm looking at something, I was going to say, I take it very, like, right back, and like, I look at this as if, you know, what happens the first time a person comes to me and says, James, can you help? You know, for me, it's really about going back towards research and understanding of their market. You know, that's at the very basic level. I'm wanting to research and understand what's actually happening from every perspective. Problem solving and creativity doesn't come without knowledge. You know, you can't just jump in and give a common answer, or a how should I put it, you know, a copycat answer for everyone. You know, there are no copycat solutions to problems. Understanding what's really going on is key to this. Is that where you would start, Mark, or how are you approaching this?
So yes, and in a short summary way that everyone could understand, if I were to go into the doctor and say, yeah, I need a prescription for Valium, or I need a prescription for Oxycontin, or I need a pain pill prescription, and the doctor just wrote the prescription out, that would be malpractice, because we haven't done a diagnosis. And for me, the diagnosis always starts out by approaching the problem with the fundamental question of what is the real problem. In other words, the problem that we're addressing, is it the real problem? Is it the problem we should be solving, or is there something bigger here?
Well, that's, yeah, it's like, are we at the cause of the problem, or are we dealing with symptoms as well? You know, and that's, yeah, understanding, having a really solid understanding of behind the scenes of the business, gives you the opportunity to be creative. This is the thing. I'd never understood this one piece. When people come to me, or if I'm chatting with people, I ask them, you know, what's their target market? You know, what's it like? Explain it to me. Who's your ideal client? And they can't explain it to me. And I know right there and then that they're never going to get past sort of first base. People that don't understand their own target market, that haven't done the research, that haven't truly looked into anything, you know, they're often the ones that are struggling for money, struggling to, you know, messaging and all this sort of stuff. But it comes back to research. And like they say, oh, but I'm not the creative type, or I can't come up with anything, or nothing I put out there resonates. It's like, no, because you don't understand your market enough to be able to put something in front of them. You can't see the angle in, you can't see the opportunity. I've said this many times before, but I probably spend a month, you know, if a new client comes on board, I'm probably spending a month really understanding their market, before I'm writing a word or really giving any, kind of qualified advice on a direction they should go in. But again, yeah, that it comes back to diagnosing the real problem or what's really going on in the marketplace.
Exactly. And I was going to say it's much worse than the problem. It's like, what is your product? What is your service? And why is it important to the market? So I can't tell you how many times I've worked with businesses that tell me, well, this is what we've always done. This is what we've always sold.
Yeah.
Which is a crazy response, because it tells me nothing. It tells me nothing about the size of the market. It tells me nothing about what the market needs. It tells me nothing about the competition. It tells me nothing. And yet when they say I need better advertising, or I need better copy, or I need a new strategy to go to market, we need to, like Stephen Covey, as we've said many times on our discussions, begin with the end in mind. What are you trying to do here? What are we trying to accomplish? And why is that important?
Yeah.
It's got to be sufficiently important to be worthy of our time and effort.
Yeah. It actually reminds me of one of my first clients came to me, and this is many years ago. It got to the point later in our kind of in our agreement to work together, and we were working together for about 5 years. After the first probably 18 months, he wouldn't send me, and normally I would send him a 22-page document and say, tell me everything about your product and your market. And after filling that in a few times, after about 18 months, I wouldn't send that to him anymore. He would just send me a paragraph about what the product does, and I would develop everything. And the only way I could do that is because I knew so much about that market. I understood who the players were, understood all the products that were happening in that market. I understood what was coming next in that market. I could see the opportunity and the angles in, and we were able to do, successful launch after successful launch simply because of the knowledge of the marketplace. And this is the thing, when it comes to creating big ideas that actually sell, understanding the nuances of the market is absolutely key.
I think, from a creative standpoint, I look at this from the ongoing value of a solution. Is this a temporary one and done deal? Or is this something that's going to last 6 months or a year or 2 years or 5 years or indefinitely? And I think so many of the solutions and so many of the problems that are brought forward are short-term and medium-term issues.
Yeah.
And being that they're so close in front of you, they're in your face. And the fact that they're in your face, it becomes two things. It becomes urgent and important, which is the highest value that you can work with, or worse, it's urgent and unimportant. And this is the noise that preoccupies everybody. These are the fires that everybody's putting out. So the first thing I do is I qualify the signal for the noise. What's really important? What's urgent and what's really important? And how does that correspond to the problem that we're trying to solve right now?
Yeah, it's a good point that a lot of people do create from reaction, like they're reacting to a market instead of anticipating a market. And again, that comes back to the research. If you understand the market, you can anticipate what's coming next. If you don't know the market, you're constantly reacting and chasing. I've got another classic example of building a company in a construction industry, and because I entered the market with a level of knowledge in marketing, I was able to jump ahead of the market probably 3 steps. And everyone that came after us was playing catch up. And
Right.
that's a powerful position to sit in. Um, and that's something that comes again with knowledge and research. And it's something that you need to think about, being ahead of the market and, anticipating a market's next move, being able to anticipate that is the most powerful position to be in. You don't want to be reacting and playing catch up and constantly copying products. You want to be creating and actually directing the market.
There's arguments to be made on both sides of the fence. I think because who you are and who I am, we tend to focus on being leaders in a space, and we want to be in front of the market. But here's a consideration: is that I've done business in 41 countries, and one of the things that I discovered was something years ago, because I live in an expensive area, and I always thought to myself, gosh, if I'd bought real estate when it was $20,000, I mean, that real estate today is 100,000. And then a few years later, is if I'd bought that real estate when it was $100,000, I'd be fat today, because they're selling for $1 million.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've all been through this, where we look back, hindsight's 2020, right? We're looking back on the decisions that we should have made when it was, quote, cheap, right?
Yeah.
But here's the thing: is if you live through that growth and that appreciation and that evolution of a market that's an advanced market. I live in California, and California has traditionally been the trendsetter. New things are always coming out of California, and it has been that way for the last 50 years. So the trend that develops in California is the next place it's going to hit may be Florida, because
Yep.
it's a similar area. And then from there, it starts working its way up into the Carolinas and into the, Washington and Oregon on the West Coast. And then eventually it gets to cover the East Coast, where there's a lot of people. And then it starts working its way into the center, and it starts with Texas, because there's more people in Texas. And then it starts spreading out from there. So the point being is that if you are in a situation where innovation is taking place, then you have a crystal ball into the future in every other area that's behind you, because we've seen it happen.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's a phenomenally powerful concept, because when we break that down, what we can say is we have to meet our customer on their journey where they are. And it could be a new business, it could be a startup, it could be a $1 million business, it could be a $10 million business. At each step, there's different characteristics and different problems. And our experience in working with dozens and hundreds of businesses over the years is that we have this perspective of seeing that growth. So when somebody comes in and says, I'm having a devil of a time, we're growing like crazy. We went from 500,000 to 1 million. We doubled in the last 8 months, and there's no sign that it's starting to slow down. I can say, oh, hold on there. Let's run a couple of these scenarios and see what's going to happen in 3 months and 6 months if we go this way, and if we go this way. So it's kind of like, what if?
Yeah.
And because we know the right questions to ask at that stage in the growth of the business, you can eliminate all of the experimentation and the risk that's involved in making a reactionary decision in the moment.
Yeah. It's, and it does keep coming back to research. And this is the biggest part of this is people really don't want to do the research because it's the ugly work. It's the grunt work. People want a tree in the ground, but they don't want to dig the hole. And, it's like, and, I don't actually blame them, to be honest, because I don't like it. I don't like doing the research. But if you want a real result, you have to do the research. It's no different. And as you know, like I'm heading in a little bit of a different direction this year, targeting real estate. And I've worked with a lot of real estate businesses in the past. I'm going deeper down that path. I've had to do some serious research over the last month and a half, probably 2 months really, to be able to understand where I can kind of get in, and the opportunity that is available. And instead of being reactionary and just coming up with a low-end cheap product, I don't want to do that. Like, I want to hit the market with something big. I've been working with clients getting amazing results, so I want to be able to put that across to them. You have to know the market well, to enter powerfully. And I see too many people that aren't willing to do the research, and then they wonder why they aren't getting a result.
You know, I'll offer a little bit of a different perspective on that. I think my experience has been that when a client comes to me and has got a problem and they're in some kind of a reactionary kind of mode, in the moment type decision, more times than not, their inability to do the research stems from their inability to ask the right questions. In other words, they don't know what they don't know. And if
Sure.
you don't ask the right question, you can never get the right answer. And again, this is why you want to have a seasoned mentor that's been down the road, because they can ask you the questions that will slap you across the face like, whoa, where did that come from? Yeah, you're right. You know, yeah, we're looking at this the wrong way. That's not the right question. That's not the right direction.
Yeah.
And that's what you want to do, is you want to give them multiple perspectives, multiple views of the same situation. So oftentimes I will do an exercise where I'll say, okay, here's your problem. Have you experienced this in the past? Yes. Well, what have you done? Blah, blah, blah. I'd say, okay, fine. This is what we're going to do. We're going to solve this problem, but you're not allowed to use any of the solutions that you've used in the past. That immediately forces you to consider, how else would I do this if I couldn't do it? Right? What would you do if all of a sudden they shut your business down and you couldn't have customers come in and sit down and order food at a table?
Yeah.
You know, that's exactly it.
I think there's been, and this is like, last year was the real kind of eye opener. It identified who does have this creative trait and who's able to problem solve and who is willing to just shut the doors and walk away. And you can see, even like we were talking before the call, you've got a prospect that you've been chatting with, with a business that's, at that $100 million mark. Now that's a large company, and we're talking about how they need to pivot in these times. And coming up with a solution for a business that size is no small feat. But again, comes back to the research, comes back to all of that, comes back to understanding what's really going on. And I mean, it's been very interesting to see who's thrown down the tools and thrown their arms in the air this year, or this last 12 months or 14, 13 months. And who's carried on, who's been able to adjust, and sometimes not by much, sometimes by a great deal, and been able to push forward.
I think one of the big things is to realize that what got you to where you are is not going to move you ahead. It's going to be a new set of skills. It's going to be a new set of practices. It's going to be a new approach.
Yeah.
And when you're faced with a major disruption like what we've just gone through with the pandemic, and somebody says, we've got to pivot our business, the first thing that I ask is, what changed that requires you to pivot? And if they say, okay, we're in the event business and they've closed all the events down, or we're in the restaurant business and we can't have customers come to sit down, in our restaurant. We are in the concert business and they've stopped concerts. All of those things represent a change in the delivery of your product to that market. There's no use at that point. So my question then would be, all right, what can we create that will help our customer recover the business that they're no longer in? So it's not about the immediate problem of fixing the person that was supplying the events. It's looking at the event industry and say, okay, what can we do to help you with events? And
Yeah.
we've seen this. We've seen virtual events pop up. We've seen fulfillment. We've seen online e-com stores that are branded stores for the event and for, you know, the brand itself. So we've seen all kinds of movement, dynamic movement there. And what we're looking at is, how are we entering this series of events? Where are we? What's our point of entry? Where are we on this journey? Where is our customer on this journey? Where is their customer on this journey? Where is the end user on this journey?
Yeah. Like you say, like asking deeper questions versus the surface level stuff. You know, when you first said, you know, when you first started talking there, you were talking about how their answer would be, oh, you know, I'm not allowed to do events anymore. At the very basic level, people say, all the money's dried up, the money's stopped. You know, they're right at the surface level of what's going on in their business or industry. They don't even understand their industry.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of people now, you can see, you know, in the online world, especially, it's grown massively. There's been a huge uptake over the last 12 months because people are being forced to go online. And it's been very interesting to see who's surviving the fallout of that. You know, I've got clients. I've actually got a client he is specialized in virtual events and doing, like, he came to me a couple of years ago and he's grown massively, like literally doing $1 million virtual events with people, you know, that take 1 or 2 days, and delivering huge results for his clients. And, you know, that came about from us understanding the market and being able to pivot from where he was and go deeper and, you know, finding better clients, higher value clients, which he wouldn't have been able to do if he was at that surface level problem solving, in that reactionary mode, just chasing money. You know, I've pushed back against him many times to say, slow down, find the bigger whale, that is going to deliver a longer term result for your business. And it's been a great strategy for him. You know, he's, as I said, creating huge results both for his client and for himself. And like taking this right back to, you know, those kind of how to create those $1 million ideas, it comes by being a little bit more open. You know, creativity as such, you know, as a skill that you can learn, I think that it is a skill people can learn.
100%.
But it's a skill of curiosity. It's a skill of being open enough to take in new information. And a lot of people are very closed off. And I don't claim to be perfect in this realm. You know, I know in myself, there's been markets that I've entered into with a very closed off view, and I've failed. And I think we've probably all been there, but it's taught me again to stay open, to be willing to ask the deeper questions, to get that deeper understanding of what's actually happening in a marketplace. Like, I think that really is the answer to most creativity, and problem solving, is understanding. Like, it's that level of mastery that, you know, when I guess when I, you know, even in my past, in hockey and water skiing and business, I've gone to a level of mastery with the things that I've done. And that allows me to be creative in those situations. And I think a lot of people don't don't go as deep as what they need to. You find the ones that go very deep and have a level of mastery are the ones that gain the rewards.
I think going deep, the starting point is to deconstruct the present, break it down into its elemental parts. You don't know what you've got. It's, think about an automobile. When I was growing up, you could still take a car apart. It wasn't, you didn't require a degree in rocket science to figure out how to make the thing work.
Likewise.
So you could actually take apart and rebuild the engine at the component level. Yeah. And I did that a couple of times. I did it twice, and after 2 times, I said, that's enough for me. I don't want to be dealing with that. Right. But you can't really get in a complete understanding of the problem you're facing until you understand all of the components and what those components mean. And a lot of times there's in your philosophy of simplification, it's how can we eliminate some of these parts? How can we eliminate these steps? Do we really need this? Why is this here? What is its purpose? What is it doing? Can we accomplish this purpose in some other simpler way? And, the creativity aspect of things, again, Occam's razor, which is the simplest solution is usually the best solution. So we want to try and simplify things down, because the more simple we can make it, the fewer things there are to break. The fewer things are to interact. The fewer things there are to create interference and problem and friction.
I think that's a big issue with people with creativity. They lean towards fancy and overcomplicate versus removing and simplifying. And you notice this a lot in the online world. That they'll move to fancy, like it's got to be fancy. It's got all
website design is the absolute worst.
And well, even products and services, and and you notice it in the way people are trying to pitch and sell stuff. There's all the bells and whistles, and it comes with everything. And instead of just solving the problem that needs to be solved, and I'm not getting that mixed up with bonuses and that sort of stuff, but often people overcomplicate what they're actually delivering or what they're trying to sell to add value, and don't realize that it's actually taking away value. Whereas a simpler, more specific, more direct, and better solution is much more valuable in a marketplace.
I think, when it comes to reducing down and simplification of creativity, the first thing that I'm going to ask is, how does this save us time? Because everything is related to time. And recently I've started taking this perspective, and you can kind of maybe call it morbid, if you will, but as I get older in my life and I'm getting more and more frustrated with the inability of my body to do the things that I did when I was younger, you realize that you're wearing out. And no matter how careful you are with your food and your diet and your exercise, there's a physical limit on what you can do. You can't work at that extreme level that you did before. And COVID has been a huge eye opener for me, and in a good way, because I've had to slow down from the pace that I was doing, and universally all of my personal health indicator numbers have skyrocketed into the green from where they were before, which was kind of stressed out and scary. So the point of all of this is that when we reduce down, we get down to that simplest thing, that every minute that we choose to do something is a minute of our life that we've decided to give up, or an hour of our life that we've given up. And I remember listening to Steve Jobs' speech to the commencement address at Stanford University in 2005 after he had his first brush with cancer. And, he was talking about, for the first time, he was having to address his own mortality and looking in the mirror and saying, if this is the last day of my life at the end of the day, this is the way that I would have spent it this way if I knew that this was the end of my life at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And
It's,
I don't think the gravity of our existence, we let that gravity, we don't treat it with that level of importance. That would really simplify a lot.
it's, and I don't want to sound like I've had this worked out for a long time, but that has been pretty front of mind for me most of my life. And like, it's, like in my book, The Expert's Handbook, I talk about the perfect day. And, you know, if you problem solve and you're creative from that perspective, from the perspective of time and is this how I want to spend my last day, you do different things, you make different choices. And it's a very important piece, like from a very high level, maybe even spiritual or purpose-driven kind of way of operating or problem solving or being creative. If you're creating from the perspective of this is the way I actually want to live my life,
mm-hmm.
it forces you to be very simple in your approach and yet highly efficient, or highly effective is probably a better word. As I said, it's something that, I do not like waste, especially waste of time or waste of effort. And when I see that, when I see people doing that, for me, it's very obvious because I've practiced it for a long time. But
Mm-hmm.
like, it is probably one of the highest values I have. Like being able to live life on your own terms, make choices that give you the life that you want to live. Because at the end of the day, we're all going to die, and we all live, and yeah, you get to choose the difference. You get to choose how you live. Um, you know, people whinging and whining about sitting behind a desk or working in a whatever condition. It's a choice to leave at any time. It's a choice to change. And it really, comes back to, you want to come up with $1 million idea, you better understand how you operate in life. Because if you can come up with $1 million idea that'll keep you busy forever, or that will give you true freedom.
Yeah, exactly. And I think a huge part of that is your outlook on life. And that outlook on life, I see this a tremendous amount from what I call the wantrepreneurs. These are the people that want to be an entrepreneur, but they can't quit their day job, right? So they want the freedom of being their own boss, but what they literally are doing is they're creating a self-employment situation. They're creating a job for themselves. And really, when it comes to focusing on creating a environment that's based on lifestyle and it's based on freedom, we're crafting an economic engine that provides the security and it provides the income so that we can afford the lifestyle. We don't have to make the decision of, do I have to go to work and do this function in order to generate the income that I use for the weekend? This concept of a weekend and the concept of vacation is completely foreign to me. It's been foreign to me my entire life.
Yeah, exactly the same. It's funny. Just thinking about, like, I've people where I live here around me that they live for the weekend, and they live for it's Australia Day coming up next Tuesday, so that's like a big deal. And it's like, I don't even know what these days are anymore. I know I used to live for them when I was back in my younger days and working in a job, but I haven't, you know, I don't ache to go away on a holiday because I live where I want a holiday anyway.
Right.
Um,
People come there for a holiday. That's
exactly.
right.
And
I've had people say that to me. It's like, oh, don't you go to the beach every single day? You live right there on the coast. It's so amazing. And I'm like, yeah, I live here. It's not that amazing to me. I mean, I enjoy the environment, but it's not like you're living in a shithole and you can't wait to get to the coast, to be by the water.
well, it's chosen.
Yeah, exactly.
And yeah, it's not good, not bad, but people, I find it funny that people aren't willing to choose their life. And like even the choosing of life, it improves creativity, improves your problem solving ability, it improves everything about what you do when you don't have to think, I've got to go somewhere else to enjoy myself.
Right.
When you wake up every day and you're enjoying yourself, and that's why I said, going back to my book, the perfect day exercise is about setting yourself up or setting your day up so that it is your perfect day. Now, every day is not going to be an absolute perfect day, but you want it to be pretty darn good every single day. You could call it the perfect average day, something that you could live every single day. When you're operating in that space, creativity is quite easy. You have it, you have the good feelings or you have the opportunity all around you. So passing that on is actually a lot easier as well.
I think that a huge part of being creative is having an outlook on life of possibility.
Yeah.
As opposed to limitation.
Yeah.
And I hear people talking about this, oh, I could never do that, or I don't have any money. They're focusing on all the things that they don't have instead of all the things that they have as resources that could be used to create phenomenal value or wealth or time or whatever you want to do.
Yeah. Well, and putting this back to creativity and coming up with big ideas is a victim's mentality is a tough place to start from.
Right.
It's, as I said earlier, it's coming back to, you've got to be open. You've got to be open enough to see opportunity. And that comes from, knowledge and understanding and asking deeper questions. But the victim doesn't operate from that space. They're closed off. And, for anyone out there that is struggling with creativity, it's like, you've got to have a look at, am I operating as a victim? Am I struggling just for the money? Am I struggling just to fix some problem? Am I asking the wrong questions? Or am I actually being curious about this problem and looking into it with an open mind to see new opportunity? And like you said, that positivity comes from openness.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a closed off thing.
A great place to start is to study creative people. Read the biographies of Benjamin Franklin, Einstein,
Da Vinci and
Thomas Edison, Da Vinci,
yep.
Isaac Newton.
Yep.
These are all great inventors. Henry Ford, the great inventors and the industrialists. They were, and even artists. You can read about great artists, people like Picasso and Salvador Dali. There's tremendous insight in terms of how they viewed the world and how they interpreted the world through their work. And there's also insight in learning and realizing that almost all of those artists starved to death, basically. They didn't sell anything while they were alive. And the reason is that they were too far ahead of the audience that was seeing their work. They thought past their audience. So this gets back to meeting your customers on their journey where they are. And that goes for us as mentors and advisors and coaches and guides as much as it is for a marketer that's trying to sell a product or an idea or a service.
Classic example of it. I've experienced that myself. years ago, me and a couple of friends came up with an idea of a twin-tailed surfboard, and we were just ahead of our time. The guys now, if it came out now, you know, you actually see twin-tailed surfboards and stuff around now, and they're doing the tricks that would make that viable. We were just 15, you know, we were actually 25 years ago, we came up with this idea and tried to give it a bit of a nudge, and it was just way too early, you know.
Well, surfing has got deep roots in Australia. And I grew up surfing in California. And I grew up in the era of longboards. And
Yeah.
those longboards weighed a ton. I'm talking about 15 kilos for a
Yeah.
board. If you got hit by a board in those days, it left a mark.
Yeah.
And I remember that when my first board, and I was 10 years old, I couldn't afford a regular board, which was probably in the neighborhood of 3 meters. Um, and so I found a guy that had broken the front of the board off, and we reshaped that board into a short or board. And I was surfing a board that was like 2.5 meters when everybody was 3.5, or even sometimes 4 meters
Yeah.
on a big board. And it was like they thought I was crazy.
I was going to say you would have been frowned upon.
Exactly, I was. And then right after that, 2 years after that, Nat Young, who was a really famous Australian surfer,
Yeah.
was really the one that pioneered the short board, and his boards were all below 2.5 meters. And then now we're, down into the, meter and a half.
Yeah. 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 See some really short ones.
Tiny.
Yeah.
And I remember experimenting. I built surfboards for many years. And
Yeah.
I got really, really good at it. I got really good at being a shaper. I got really good at being a glasser. I was good at design. I came up with some really interesting rail combinations that worked really well. They were so fast. My boards that I made were so fast that you'd stand up and the board would just take off from underneath you. So it took you a while to get used to the configuration of that. But they weren't super popular because it wasn't what the mainstream was doing. But the people that were riding those boards and got used to them loved them because they were so different and they were so maneuverable. And I remember twin tail boards. They were all still single fin. They didn't have twin fins or tri fins or quad fins. They were all single fins. So that really limited the value of a twin tail board when you only had a single fin.
Yeah, it's like, and this is the thing, it's, again, like, and we'll wrap this up, I think, but just taking it back to, for people watching, that doing the research, asking the deeper questions, being curious, staying open is really the way through when you're looking to create something big. As I said, for clients, I do a lot of research for clients so that I can understand a marketplace and actually preempt the next move of the market. And that's the way you actually become a leader in a market. I'll wrap up there, but Mark, do you have anything to finish up on?
I was just thinking, this has been a great discussion, and it's been very fertile in terms of ideas and extensions of ideas and things like that. For a future session, I think something that would be really good would be to pose a market-related problem and have a creative problem-solving session and come up with multiple solutions to the problem. And so that viewers, the people that are watching this, can see how we do it.
What might be even more interesting is to get someone else on and to have a hot seat situation. So if you know someone, or otherwise I might look out for someone and we might do that in the future. But
that would be fun, I think.
Yeah, as always, great to chat, Mark. We will leave it there and talk again next week.